Everybody, this is Mary McCarthy with the Connecticut LTAP. Glad to have you join us for on the East Coast, our Lunch and Learn, or Coffee and Conversation, or Chit Chat and Chew, I think is what New Hampshire's calling theirs. We're going to kind of continue our conversation from last time. There were some great conversation and some good questions that stemmed from our conversation a couple weeks ago. So today we're going to focus on online learning and hot topics. We've got some wonderful presenters today. Let me bear with me as I navigate this GoToMeeting.
Mary, while you're doing that, this is Victoria. I'm just going to go ahead and unmute all of our attendees. Please remute yourself if you're not prepared to ask a question at this time. So I've just pushed the button to unmute everybody. So if you are still muted, then you should be able to unmute yourself in order to ask a question. But if you're not asking a question, we do ask that you stay muted so we cut down on the background noise. And Mary, Matt Enders wanted to know if everybody was ready for some hot topics.
We are.
He can unmute
We're
himself.
We're always ready for hot topics, Matt. So a couple of logistics before we go into some housekeeping. As Victoria indicated, keep yourselves muted unless you're ready to speak. We are recording and it will be available as long as the tech works. Technology, as we all know with connectivity, can be tricky. So as long as we have a good recording to share, we will be sharing that link afterwards. We ask that you use the question box if you want us to be able to get back to you. So we are able to record those. So if you ask a question and we aren't able to answer it during the call today, then we will be able to get back to you on those. You can use the chat box to chat amongst yourselves or also to ask questions. We just can't record those, so they kind of get lost as soon as the webinar is over. Also, we have presentations available in the handout pod. So those are copies of the presentations from the speakers today. So we are going to kick things off with Denise Brown from the North Dakota LTAP. She has been participating, their center has been participating for several years in the Transportation Learning Network. So I consider her my go-to senior stateswoman on online learning when I have a question about it. So Denise, if you would like to talk to us a little bit about your experiences.
Okay, good morning here in North Dakota yet. And it is a sunshiny day, so we're ready to go ahead and do some learning. And thank you everyone for attending. I know I've been inundated with a lot of webinars, but it's a great way to learn for us and for our customers. So what I'm going to talk about today is how we use the learning management system through the Transportation Learning Network during these challenging times where we can't get out and train our people face-to-face. So the Transportation Learning Network is a partnership of Montana DOT, North Dakota DOT, South Dakota DOT, Wyoming DOT, and the Mountain Plains Consortium universities. So it is actually broadcasting video conference either in our Fargo location, most commonly, or our Bismarck location. It's a valued partnership that we have. We have access to video conferences, to the webinars, and we have recordings of almost all of them, depending on if the presenter wants it published into the content server. And then we have access to the learning management system, which is huge for our customers. And then I'm going to talk about the North Dakota LTAP resources page that we direct a lot of our customers to, and it definitely is a great resource for them, especially during this time. So the recorded presentations on the TLN, I'm going to use acronyms here, being I gave you the definition before, so checking to see if you're on track. And our recorded presentations, we have them almost, the webinars are almost always recorded, and the video conferences. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll take a recorded video conference or webinar and take it out of our content server and put it on our resources page, so people outside of our network, the DOTs, the states that I mentioned, so that they can have access to them as well. The customers could get Road Scholar credits for these webinars and video conferences that are recorded, as long as the supervisor signs off on the form that we provide. So a great way to earn credits for the Road Scholar program, especially if they have a large crew that's sitting in a conference room. Of course, you won't see that now, but really it's a great training tool for them to be able to get together in a room and actually watch a recorded training. Handouts are provided during the presentation, so those are accessible to our customers as well. Maybe they watch the video conference and later, 2 weeks down the line, they forgot some of the material. They can go back into the learning management system and easily access those PDFs and print them out for themselves or for their crew. The self-paced learning modules, TC3, we have almost all of those uploaded into the learning management system. The reason that we have the TC3 in that mechanism is because North Dakota DOT and they are a member state to TC3, and so they're able to share those modules. And also Chris Padilla has done a lot of review for the TC3 modules, so they are able to share those. And as they share them, we're able to track how many people have participated in those modules. We do have 7, or I'm pretty sure it's close to 7, maybe 11, that were developed by TLN. That was done a few years ago, where we actually used the program Articulate, and we developed self-paced training modules that we're able to share in the LMS. The learning modules can be tracked in the customer's learning plan, and there's a transcript that can be accessed. So if a supervisor wants to know what type of training they've had in the past, they can easily access that. The customers receive Road Scholar for the self-paced training modules as well. A lot of them are only an hour, hour and a half, so we usually round up to the next hour, just depending on how it's set up with the self-paced learning modules. So we're just kind of getting into that with our Road Scholar program. We're going to be tweaking that in the future. The resources page. This is a resources page that we direct all of our customers to, whether it's a county commissioner, county auditor, road superintendent. Our most popular page, of course, being from North Dakota, our center focuses on gravel and motor grader information. And here you'll see a lot of different trainings that we have. We have PDFs, we have video of showing what our motor grader operator training is about. We have also webinars that have been recorded, just about any type of training you can think of that's available in here. The communicating online learning opportunities, this I just put together last week. Being we are not able to go out and do face-to-face training, our audience doesn't seem to use a lot of our online training unless you kind of walk them through it and show them how valuable it is. So I wanted to make sure that our customers realize how much information online training that they have available to them. And so with this constant contact notice that I sent out to them, I told them right now, just look at the pavement maintenance. That's what's happening in North Dakota right now. They're doing a lot of crack sealing, a lot of crack filling in the counties. And I wanted them just to focus on one area, not the whole learning management system, because it can be overwhelming with all the information that's available to them. So when they click on the access to the online training opportunities, they come up to a chart that has links that are hyperlinks that they can click on, and I'll give them a description of the course that they wanted, that they're interested in. As you can see, the first one is a TC3. It is 1.5 training hour, learning hour, and they can click on it. They'll go to TLN. It'll give them the description of the self-paced learning module, and then they can go ahead and register for it and find it in their learning plan and continue from there. Recorded presentations, the third one down the line, asphalt maintenance, crack sealing to surface repairs. This one was done by Tom Wood, and they can actually view that recording of only 2 hours. So it's a great way to learn, a short amount of time. It's not a 6-hour learning, it's a 2-hour. And then as we go farther down the line, the North Dakota LTAP Road Ready Research. This is something that we do periodically with the LTAP program. We just find a topic that we feel is important to our audience and then do a research paper on it. This one was on crack seal best practices. It's a 2-page PDF that's very easy to read and is downloadable and printable. And then of course we have our other LTAP resources that we direct them to. This was just a one-time thing that I've sent out. I'm likely going to tweak it some more, but I just want our audience to know of the availability of the online learning. This is one of the descriptions, the flexible pavement preservation treatment. So it gives you the description, the target audience, and then further down you'll see the person who's presenting the topic. So I'm not going to take any more of the time. We have lots of great other presenters here, but if you do have other questions on the learning management system and what's available, and check out our North Dakota LTAP resources page, you'll learn a lot, and you can direct your audience to our page as well. And I wish you luck in this e-learning environment. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. And there's no questions currently related to the topic you just presented on in the question pod. So I'm going to move forward with making Emily our next presenter.
So yeah, Emily from Kansas LTAP is going to share some recent experiences she's had and also talk about an upcoming opportunity.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, so with Kansas LTAP, we don't have a lot of experience in online training. And so what we've kind of been doing is looking at this from one, how do we manage teams remotely? And then two, how can we move kind of from being a content creator to more of a content curator? So that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about today. Send that email that Donna sent out yesterday with some free software tools. One of those is Microsoft Teams. And that's what we've been using personally. And that one is free, available to everyone, it seems, whether you're based out of university or college or not. So you can have a team, which is this KUTC, and then you can create sub-channels. So I have my own for my team. For the post section, it's kind of like work Facebook. So you can talk about things related to work specifically, or you can just say, hey, you know, I think my dog would be a great office dog. We should have that. It also allows us to have a task list, which I think is one of the greatest benefits for me. So you can create a task, you can assign it to people, have a due date. If you click this charts button, it just gives you an overview of what's been completed, what's overdue. This hasn't been updated. We've done all of our work, but it shows the breakdown from people as well. And then we also have a document library attached for us. So we have a SharePoint folder that this is linked to. So this is how all of our students, all of our staff members, can share resources without necessarily having to go through the VPN connection, which can be a little troublesome sometimes. And then they also have a lot more that you can add to this top in terms of tabs. So if you click that plus button, you'll see that there's a lot more you can choose from. So that's what we're using just to kind of help manage our teams while we're working remotely. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was, we went from content creation to more content curating. And one of the things we're doing is we've created this Google Calendar to show upcoming live webinars across, FHWA, class, other LTAPs, just anything we can find we're trying to put on here. So I have a student that works 10 hours a week full time updating this, making sure everything's up to date. If you were to click on something, for example, it gives the full description and a link to register. This has an HTML code that I would be happy to share with anyone, so you can have it embedded on your website if you would like that. And it would update whenever we make updates as well. So I know NLTAPA has a great calendar resource as well. This is just what we've been doing. The other thing we've been doing is we've been working on compiling a list of resources for online training that's on demand, so it's always available. So we have the source, course title, length, we've got the category, and then the cost. And what I like about this, and the reason why we created it, is because there's so many different agencies and sources, and if a local's just looking for gravel roads, it can be hard to sort through all of that on their own. But this way they can come in, search on course title, and just type in gravel and hit enter. So now they see what's available to them and where. And this is being updated regularly by one of my students as well. So for example, asphalt, same thing. It just, I think, hopefully makes it easier on locals to find what they need to find. So that will be on our website, hopefully today, if not sometime this week. So we took some time making that. And these are, it links directly to all the classes, and there's also direct links to all the sources. So we really wanted to make sure everyone got credit. And then lastly, a lot of our instructors aren't very tech savvy and don't have their courses in an online format. But luckily, I just completed 5 days of training with the Kansas Leadership Center on teaching leadership principles. And that will be pretty easy to move into a webinar format. So I will be providing a series of webinars on leadership principles through this professional development group to all LTAP centers. And I will also be providing it to our locals. So Tuesdays is going to be for you guys, and Wednesdays is going to be for the locals. And there's a PDF in the handout section that has more information about what the principles are that we're teaching, a little information about me as a facilitator, and then all the registration details will be posted on Kansas LTAP soon. So I think that's everything I have. I know I tend to go a little fast, so if there's any questions, please let me know.
I'm glad you left lots of time for questions, because you definitely have some. First off, I'll start off with the comment that came into the question box, and it's from Renee Railsback in Colorado. She said, Emily, that is an amazing training list. Lots of exclamation points there at the end. The next thing is a question from Matt Carter in Delaware. He said, Emily, does Teams change the format of Word, Publisher, Excel documents the way that Google Drive does?
No, it does not. It's slightly different. Here, I'll go ahead and open one. So for example,
you'll need to reshare your screen.
Okay, good. It says, all right, can we see now?
We sure can.
Okay, great. So for example, I've also been working on instructor guidelines. So our instructors can use this time to kind of redo their course content just to make it a little bit more consistent, a little easier to read, and to be a little bit more in line with adult learning principles. So this is what Word looks like. It's pretty much the exact same. And this is editing it in Teams. But you can also, if you close that and click the 3 buttons, you can open it in browser, you can open it in the desktop app, you can download it. So no, it's not the same as Google Drive. It's the same Word format that you're used to.
Okay, and we have a person that's raised their hand in the attendee panel, Lori Cover. Lori, I'm going to unmute you here on our end if you want to go ahead and ask a question.
You know, that was an accident, so I apologize for that. I couldn't quite figure out how to turn that back off. I thought I had, so no, I don't have a question at this point, but thank you.
No problem. Wanted to make sure we were being responsive to you. All right, we have a question actually for Denise in the question box. We'll go ahead and read that off now. It's Martha Horseman in Kentucky, and she wants to know, what LMS does Denise use?
Okay, what the LMS, I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
They want to know what LMS you use.
It is called LearnFlex or Open Text, and it is a very robust system, and I can send you the link. I can send you the information, Martha, or I can also share it with Victoria.
We can send it out as a follow-up email along with a link.
Okay.
To the recording. Great. And there was a question actually from one of your co-presenters. They wanted to ask you a question about the Rhodes Scholar. So Karen, did you want to unmute real quick and ask that question?
Thank you, Victoria. Yes, I was a little curious of how you give Rhodes Scholar credits for the little 1.5 to 2 hour segments. Is there a quiz, or what is the accountability for your Rhodes Scholar credits?
With the Rhodes Scholar credits, with the self-paced learning modules, you can see if they've completed it. It's something that's done automatically through the learning module. And once it's been completed, we can check their learning plan to see if they've actually completed the course. So if they started it and they haven't completed it, they haven't gotten to the end of it, it'll show incomplete. So they won't get credit. They have to actually go through the whole thing. And there are quizzes throughout the self-paced learning modules.
Okay, that makes sense. So the LMS actually does the verification for you in a sense.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Great, and there's no more questions at this time in the question box. So Mary, would you like to introduce our next presenter?
Absolutely. So Ted Green is going to be our next presenter from the New Jersey LTAP. Ted, welcome. Ted is going to talk a little bit about his perspective as an instructor, changing some in-person training to an online format, kind of on the fly as we are all dealing with our current situation. Ted?
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. Slightly frazzled because I actually just completed doing 2 hours of training earlier this morning, right before this one, so I had to switch some platforms. So I did, hopefully you see my presentation, because I did violate one of my slides already. So I'm going to talk about some of the experience I've had about switching to online learning, and this is from the instructor's point of view, and some of the lessons I've learned so far. And being I got an email from one of my coworkers, there are some new lessons we have to sort out as well on that. So one thing I found out that some existing workshops are naturally translate over to distance learning on that. The one I've been doing this week, some of you may have been on that as well. That one, it was just straight out lecture. Just had some basic slides on it. That one, because originally a long time ago, somebody removed any exercises from it. That one just naturally translated over to the distance learning. Unfortunately, you don't get any idea how well people are receiving it outside of the evaluations that we get on that. But so that one was easy enough to do it. Others, we might have a little bit more of a challenge with that. But some, just look at them. If they can just quickly do it, it won't even change in timelines as well. One thing we've learned, and other LTAPs have learned this as well, and we got the ideas from them, is you need to break up the chunks on it. Ideally, a webinar is not more than an hour. That's in the ideal world. However, When you have a 6-hour class, it's not practical to spread it out over 6 days on that. So we're finding that breaking up the class into 2-hour chunks seems to work as well. This also will allow us, as we go into this, and it looks like we're doing online learning at least through middle of August at this point, and that's from our university. I can do a session in the morning, and I can do a completely different class in the afternoon. So it gives us that ability as well. So like a 4-hour class could be broken up into 2 days, 2 hours on, just say today, 2 hours tomorrow on that. In a 6-hour class I'm doing this week, 2 hours yesterday, 2 today, 2 tomorrow. So that always has that ability to break it up into multiple points. This also works better with some people's schedules. And also what time we pick does have makes a difference. I have one class that's specifically to public works personnel coming up in a couple of weeks. We reached out through our APWA local chapter and they found out from them, even though they're working split shifts, 8 a.m. is a good time for them because they have some people that might be coming in, others that are gone home. They can watch it when they get home for that particular class as well. So that one has an unusual start time. But it may work better because bandwidth is better at 8 a.m. than 10 a.m. on that. Learning new tools such as polling can always be a challenge. I mean, I have classes that I have been using the iClicker, and in theory, I can still use iClicker, but it does require everybody to download the iClicker software on their smartphones, and that can be a different challenge. So learning how to use polling, and of course, at the same time, negotiating it. If you're doing all these items by yourself, like what I usually am doing, I have to keep track of everything, not only just of who has inadvertently turned their microphone on and who's turned their cameras on. I also have to keep track of polling, which can always, create those slight awkward pauses in there as you're trying to get polling questions up, as well as how to properly save polling and bring them up as a file overall. So just adds additional things on that. Of course, we've learning that other ways to work about chat to do it. I was thinking about doing this before we had the previous lessons or previous lunchtime morning coffee chat. Thanks Nebraska LTAP for actually helping me when they had this slide up. Housekeeping slide does help quite a lot to find things out there, and this is the one I'm using. I'm personally having used Cisco WebEx meeting, which I'm finding it has its drawbacks, but it has one massive advantage over the other platforms I can use. But people do things, so try to keep people from doing things overall with that. Like I have a handouts file, how to get to download the handouts that hopefully when they sign in, they see this pop up that's there. But of course, I have this important message about making sure you mute your phones and video. Unfortunately, people have a horrible habit of unmuting their video and microphones, and I hear the microphones, and some people have deliberate typing. You can definitely hear that one, so that becomes an issue. In the platform I'm using, the chat box doesn't always pop up, so this just says if you want the chat box, pop that out there. For the best view, for in this case, if you get the main presentation in a bigger view and get the one presenter, which I have to lock, you can just go up here to get a side-by-side view, and you get this view that here, that's what the participants would see on that overall. And if they have to exit, that's the exit button. So, well, of course, there's always this big question: how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Well, it's always the answer is practice, 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 and the same thing comes to using these various web programs. I had not used WebEx in a number of years, and I do a lot of online training with the FHWA Resource Center. They're using Adobe Connect. That's easy to use from these standpoints. I've definitely got used to that, so having to switch over to WebEx meeting is always an issue. So you have to go through and doing it, because what we see on screen on our computers as a host or a presenter is different than what the participants see. So I've had to do some interesting things in learning what to unlock, when I can unlock or lock certain things as well. So there's a fair amount of practice gets involved with that. Each platform is different as well, so you have to learn how they work, what you're working on it. Also, I've learned today, if you switch platforms, cameras get messed up, you have to reboot your computers. Also, if you go through it, so learn what it is. Some of these platforms will allow you to stream video. So if you have a video embedded in your program, you can actually stream it. That's one advantage I found out with Cisco Meeting, the WebEx Meeting. It actually allows me to show videos, which is I'm doing next week in a class. But otherwise, I might be switching over to WebEx Training, which does not have that ability to stream the videos overall. But to stream videos, I found out you do need a powerful computer. It's a desktop computers. I tried it with a laptop. It doesn't work. I was fortunate enough being the last person out of the office. I grabbed my computer, which has the ability to actually do that. And you need to have a good upload internet speed as well. Download is different than upload. Usually it's slower. You need to have a good enough upload to manage it, but you do need that strong computer to handle the video, cameras, audio, and the actual program itself. And those are just some of the things I've learned. Oh, I think I have one more slide. Use an Ethernet cable if possible. Even if you're a presenter or just a participant, using an Ethernet cable and Wi-Fi makes a big difference on that. You get a much, you don't have to worry about the Wi-Fi dropping out on you. It's usually also a much faster connection. I definitely have a faster connection on Ethernet than Wi-Fi as well. So if you can do that, it's just a good practice for everybody to do out there. Having good audio is typically more important than having good video, and that does make a difference as well. People are generally forgiving of bad video, but audio can make a big difference. Watch a lot of your local news where they've gone local. You can know people get a little annoyed when they see the one reporter at home who may not have good audio, but they might have great video, so that becomes an issue on it. So audio is more important than video. People do want to see the instructors. They want to see how they interact. Of course, we as instructors like to interact with people, but we don't get that ability on that. So just make sure you have an acceptable video camera. Make sure your lenses are clean as well. Somebody I know had a dirty lens because they put their thumb over it. Makes it really blurry, so just make sure your lens is clean. Have decent lighting. It does make you more visible as well. And if you're using your laptop camera, maybe put your laptop on a box. People have received plenty of Amazon boxes. Just place it on that or raise the camera up closer to your face level on that. So, and those are some of the things I've been learning the last couple days, a couple weeks on these items. Sorry for going long.
Oh, you didn't. You did a great job. Thank you very much, Ted. Little comment, Keith Knapp had a good tip as well. He found that attendance above 50 requires another person to watch the chat, etc. Yeah, when there's a lot of activity in the questions pod or the chat pod, you definitely need another set of eyes to help keep that moving. That looks, question for Ted. Looks like Megan is.
Hi, Ted. This is Megan from Kentucky. How are you?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Pretty good. We are in the process of trying to create some of our classes to be put online. And one of my biggest fears, I guess, and you having dealt with this, is how do you get people to be engaged during the class? So we still want that participation key. And I guess, how do you get, besides the polls, how do you get people to interact and want to talk and participate for the discussion?
A lot of times you might have to ask questions, and then a lot of times if it's a smaller group, it is possible if somebody's managing to turn microphones on if they use to raise hand. I haven't done that yet. One we're going to work on with in a couple weeks with another instructor I'm working with. He's probably going to still try to keep his problems in, but people are going to respond through the chat box instead with their answers. So we don't know how that's going to work on that overall. Some people have tried that recently, using the chat for responses on that. That is one of the harder problems we have, is trying to keep that interactive aspect, but a lot of it's going to be chat boxes, we think.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
It's Keith. Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Actually, it's more of a comment, I guess. Sorry. So in WebEx training, and of course Zoom also, Adobe Connect also, you can also do breakout rooms. Yeah. I've done 2 or 3 actually as a participant in the last 2 or 3 weeks, in which you break the, you give them material, and you can do, we're going to be doing case studies that way. Break them into groups and for a certain amount of time, and then they pop back in and you talk as a larger group. So I'm learning that in WebEx training right now, but it is in a couple other softwares also.
Yeah, I might have to talk to you about that one, because I'm looking into WebEx training later. because I got a class, I might have to worry about that.
Yeah, and we're just getting into it because that's what the school's using. So
Yeah, the only reason why I'm using WebEx Meeting is because I have the ability to stream videos right now. So
Okay, we have one more speaker, so I'd like to swap it over to Karen Atkinson from from PSATS and the Pennsylvania LTAP. She's going to talk a little bit about, but actually continue on this portion of the conversation with some of the interaction and how they've kind of been able to move online quickly. And she actually has one of her instructors, Patrick, with her. So they're going to share a little bit of information with us.
Good afternoon. I'm Karen Atkinson, and I'm the program manager for the Pennsylvania LTAP. We have never ventured out into any kind of virtual or online training. So we really had to dig deep in our toolboxes and kind of see what we had available to use. So Pannoni, which is our main contractor that does most of our safety training, who will be joining us in a couple minutes, they had a GoToWebinar platform. So we were able to use that platform. We actually, PSATS is a contractor with PennDOT to deliver the LTAP program, and we have a Microsoft CRM, and we were able to develop forms for the evaluation and for the quiz. For our Road Scholar credits, we use the quiz format. So that was the reason that we definitely need to have some kind of accountability that they sent through the class. All the handouts have gone on our website, and they're links that they can download. And then after the class is done, we actually take all the people who attended and the Road Scholar information and have to put it back into the LTAP website, so all their training is in one place. I wish we had an LMS because yes, it's a little bit complicated. However, we started on March 19th and we've almost had a class every single day all the way through May 8th. So it's worked so far. We're only doing our half-day classes. So they start at 8, end at 4, and they're about 50 minutes and we take a 10-minute break. And we have limited them to 25 people to help keep interaction. We didn't modify any of our PowerPoints. They have a lot of photos in them. They seem to have worked well. The instructors have done some modifications of adding pollings and things like that. But we've not gone through a huge effort to redevelop things. We are learning that the virtual takes a little more time. It was a little tough to get through the 4 hours of content. So I think they've taken some things out here or there. So in the future, it would be nice if we could modify a few more of the PowerPoints to be a little more conducive to this type of training. So now I'd like to introduce Patrick Wright, who has been my lead instructor of making this successful for us and working with his team of teachers. So he's going to explain the delivery and the engagement part.
Hi, everybody. I am a traffic engineer with LTAP and be teaching a lot of the safety classes. Been doing this for the last several weeks, and we've definitely learned a lot, as some of you already said, about online teaching. And one of the things that everybody brought up initially is it's very difficult to actually manage the class and then also manage the kind of presentation software. We're using GoToWebinar for our classes. So we actually are using 2 instructors right now. And in a lot of cases, we actually have a lot of back and forth between the 2 instructors. Sometimes we'll break up the presentation. We'll have one instructor do the first part, then another instructor do another part. In the meantime, the support instructor is in the background dealing with all those technical issues that people have been talking about, muting microphones and answering questions and doing some of the other things, making sure that things are sounding okay and looking okay. We've also been working very hard, if you want to go to the next slide, Karen, to deal with interaction and trying to get a lot of people more interactive into the class. And one of the things that we found that the software has some tools we can use. We have been using the polls. We also use the the chat box, the question box, the drawing tools. We found the drawing tools are actually great. We do have a lot of photos, and so we can look at pictures of, exciting traffic things like signs and crosswalk markings and things like that. And you could highlight things and circle things, those tools are actually kind of useful. We've also been inserting some activities. In one of our classes, just for some reason, we just developed a new class on crosswalks. And if you can look at the picture there on your screen, we have one of our young engineers, Marvin, just happens to be in a lot of pictures. So we had a contest throughout the whole class. Anytime a picture came up and people could see Marvin, the first person to enter Marvin was the winner. So we're trying to introduce some fun things like that. We are doing something in our safe driving class that we have signs that are actually the wrong colors throughout the presentation. So when they're going through there, they can identify those signs. So we're trying to add them things to make people engaged. And we also have pictures. One of our instructors calls it the good, bad, and the ugly. So we have some good pictures of like a stop sign, for example, some bad ones and some really bad ones there. And they generate a lot of comments. We had one session last Friday. You can see there in that blue statement, we had almost 800 responses from our participants. And this was 25 attendees in the class. So that was an average of almost 32 responses per attendee, which means that on average, somebody is typing something into their box every 7 minutes for the duration of the 4-hour course. So we think that asking a lot of questions and showing pictures like you see here, this is a great work zone setup that actually happened to be about a half mile from my house in Camp Hill here in central Pennsylvania. It was really terrible, as you could see. And we put that up there, and the participants, we ask them, what is good or bad about that picture and that setup? And you could see some of the sample chats that they have in there. And we found that this is a great way to really get people involved and interactive in it. They're not only just commenting, sometimes they're asking questions, and it keeps the conversation going. We have tried, like we're doing in this meeting here, unmuting people and having them ask questions. And that works sometimes too, but a lot of times we find just doing it with the chat box like you see here really works. And we've been getting a really high level of involvement. And the GoToWebinar software actually has some analytics at the end of it that you can get that actually presents how engaged people are, and those people who are almost 100% attentive, and those other people that might be minimizing the presentation and things like that. It kind of tracks that for us. And our level of engagement has been around 90, which is a pretty good high rating. So the pictures really, really help. We also do polling. It's actually interesting to us. I think the polling is actually going to help us get some data that we may have not had before to find out how people are following standards or how they're doing different things and all that. This is a sample of a work zone class question that we have up there. In Pennsylvania, if you are mowing along a road and your mower encroaches on the roadway, you are required to use a shadow vehicle to protect the mowing operator. And we find there, if you look, that almost half of the people aren't doing that in this session. So that was kind of interesting there to find that out. So we're actually using the polling to engage people. Really, the pictures we have and the way we develop our classes all along has been really, really helpful for how we've been engaging folks. And I think it's actually surprised me when Karen first approached me and said, we're going to do our 4-hour classes. My initial response was, there's no way we're going to keep people engaged for 4 hours. I kind of like Ted's idea of breaking things up into 2-hour chunks, and I thought that's something that we should do. But Karen said, no, let's just try it. And we've tried it, and the response has been pretty good. I think Karen's going to talk about some of the feedback we got so far next.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, most of the feedback, because the evaluations are done right after, have been very positive. I think we're reaching some people that we may not normally reach that can't get to classes. They like the fact that they don't have to travel. So I definitely don't think this is going to go away for us. It's just a matter of what does it look like. Some of the challenges have been obviously trying to fit that virtual training in 4 hours and being respectful of people's time, but they still enjoyed the class. There are still quite a few comments that they like the virtual. It's nice during this time, but they still prefer the classroom setting, which is what we thought most of our audience actually likes. And Pennsylvania does have some internet issues. So it'll be interesting when we're done with all this to see where the holes are of which people didn't have the opportunity to attend training. We're looking at a couple ideas of trying to open up some just like drop-ins to let people experience that technology to see if it would work for them. There may be some hesitation of signing up for a 4-hour class. However, the classes that we market, so we have a database of about 5,000 original emails, 9,000 people, and those 25 seats are filling in 5 minutes. So obviously there's a captive audience right now. We're also looking at trying to do kind of a comprehensive evaluation program when we're done with this, to go back and look at the process, what we did, what worked, and what should we be doing in the future. So I'm sorry, I guess I was one behind here. A couple of things we'd like to do is actually an introduction video, so the instructors don't have to go through those introduction slides. And just a welcome to the virtual training session. And we'd like to improve our testing. We literally give them the test questions over the internet live, and then they fill out a form later. It's a little bit of a tedious process, but we want to make sure that they have the right answers, so we haven't quite figured out that part yet. So that is what we did, I would say, on a whim as quickly as we could, and it's opened some new doors for us, so we're pretty excited about the future.
All right, thank you so much. We had a couple of hands raised during the presentation, so I'm going to start off with David Orr. You had a quick question during Ted's presentation. What was that question?
Wasn't so much a question. Ted had asked a item about keeping interaction. And one of the things that the times we've done in the past, we haven't done it yet, is to actually create an exercise for folks to do during the class. And you actually could use it as a way to have both a break to give people a minute or two to get away from the computer, and an exercise to come back and then talk about the results of the exercise.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Ben Colucci, you had a question. You had your hand raised. What can we do for you? You have to, I think you might have to unmute yourself, Ben, if you're talking to us. Okay, well, while we wait for Ben to come back online, there was a question by Martha Horseman from Kentucky. Oh, Ben?
Yes, I'm there.
Oh, okay, sorry. You had a question during Ted's presentation?
Well, I just want to compliment everything that Ted mentioned is excellent. I just want to mention Puerto Rico, we use Zoom. The chat was very good to get information about the participants if they want to get continuing education units, and they will give on the chat their EIT and the PE number in our case. And instead of 2 hours, we use 1.5 hours. And we have introductory remarks 10 minutes before the webinars. We start 1:20 to 1:30, we have the introductions, and then we start at 1:30 to 3. We use a poll twice so we can get the feedback of the people. But what is nice, we had almost 800 people in 5 webinars, 800 to 150 people. But what was impressive is that people wanted to get connected. They were giving thanks that we gave them the opportunity. It's a learning process, but we need to continue this. And what I want to learn from all of you are which of those tools that are available have the most positive aspects and areas to improve. If we can have like a summary table of that, that would be nice. I'm working that with Irma Lee Franco to put a table, but if we can find what is the best for the money we have, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Okay, any response to Ben's question? Or maybe we could set up a side email conversation about, you know, the pros and cons of the different systems.
Yes, what's a remark? We can talk later on. What's just a remark?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, sure, gotcha. Okay, so next question is Martha Horseman. She wanted to know, I think this is kind of open for everybody, is with the quiz format. Do you do pass fail, or do they just need to complete it, or how does everybody handle any kind of online assessments like that?
This is Ted. Right now, we're just exploring it just for keeping people interactive at it. There's one class where we haven't figured out how we're going to convert it because it is about 30 hours. That one has a test, so we haven't figured out how we're going to get to the actual test, but that one has a scoring, so that one's going to be definitely a challenge.
Okay, and kind of to go off of that, Lori Cover had a question about suggestions for doing a quiz. For those of you who've done a little bit of that, do you have suggestions? And remember to unmute yourselves if you are responding so we can hear you.
This is Ted again. I haven't explored into it yet, but I know WebEx Training and a few other platforms do have the ability to actually have formal quizzes. I think Nebraska, what they were using an online quiz test for their traffic control class as well. So that might be, some of these platforms do have the ability to have test quizzes that grade automatically in them.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else about doing the quizzes? Okay, oh, yep.
Oh, yeah, hi. This is Catherine Stanley. I'm with Minnesota LTAP.
Oh, yes, hi.
Hi, we do have, well, our courses, online courses, they are through Canvas, and they do have, you can build quizzes in there and they'll grade them. But for some of our webinars, we just have a simple quiz sheet they download, and then they just either circle or highlight their answer, and then they just email it to us.
Gotcha, all right.
I'm here from the Puerto Rico LTAP. This is Irmali Franco. In Puerto Rico, what we did, we asked the instructor to give us 10 questions regarding the topic of the seminar. And then we send, after the webinar, we send an email to all the participants with the link of a Google form, a quiz. And as soon as we receive their answers, we are checking who answer or not, to send them the certification of the contact hours.
Okay, thank you, Armali. Next question, Steve Strength from Louisiana. Do you find much participation on smartphones versus computer? Is anybody tracking that, and how's that working out?
This is Karen from Pennsylvania. I'm not sure if we can track it, but we have gotten some comments back that people could walk around on their iPhones while their kids were on the computers doing their schoolwork and still participate in training.
Nice, versatility.
Hi, this is Catherine with Minnesota again. I also have heard from some of our locals that since Canvas, that's what our LMS, that has an app that they download to all of their devices, and when they're at the park, they can be working on it. And but yeah, I don't think there is a way to track that unless you're just asking a question in your evaluation.
Okay. Victoria, did you want to put up the poll questions while we continue to discuss these questions? Perfect. We're getting so high tech. So Victoria was kind enough to generate a couple of poll questions based on some of the questions that we got submitted beforehand. So the first one is, how are people planning to reschedule in-person training? So if you can select one, either we are not rescheduling now, don't know the length of the pandemic, or we've rescheduled classes for the fall. And while you are doing that, we'll continue to ask these questions. Let's see.
David has his hand raised again.
Oh, okay, perfect. David?
So there's a third choice here, which actually you've already heard Pennsylvania's doing, Ted's doing. We're looking at doing it as well. And that is, we're trying to take as much of the training as we can and find ways to get it out to the folks now in online methods, be it webinars, turning them into tech tips, or silly Facebook Live that we do each Monday, something. So.
Okay. All right.
And Mary, there was one question I responded to when one of the presenters was speaking, but I want to make sure it doesn't get overlooked because I really only gave an Ohio response. Martha Horseman from Kentucky wanted to know what surveying questions software are you using for people to do through their phones?
We were using GoToWebinar and they were able to use their iPhone.
Yeah. This is TED WebEx, same thing. They have an app for, at least definitely for Android.
Okay.
Zoom has one as well.
Okay. All right, thank you. Oh, here we go. Looks like we're about, well, 50-50. And then of course, if you give that third option, I'm sure that's kind of mixed in with what's being shown here.
Kate Davison has her hand raised.
Yes, and I see a question here. So Kate, why don't I just let you ask that? Either whatever question you raised your hand for or the question here that you have posted on your in the pod.
Yeah, so my question is about tracking focus. Zoom has a feature where you can go in and look at what percentage of time an individual actually had the Zoom application and focus. Is anybody planning to use that at all when awarding things like certification or Rhodes Scholar credit, as opposed to using quizzes or evaluations or in combination with that?
This is Ted. I haven't gotten into that because it depends on what platform I'm using. WebEx Meeting doesn't have that ability. Training does. I know GoToWebinar has that ability. So if somebody is doing something else, it tells you they're doing something else. Right now, trying to go on the honor system. If I'm finding out it's an issue, I probably will have to start tracking it that way.
Okay, while we continue thinking about that one, there's another poll that just popped up. What technology are you using for your online training? GoToMeeting, Zoom, Reverse Classroom, YouTube, other. So if you can take a minute and select that for yourself. And while we do that, we had some comments from Ben echoing some of what Armali was saying about giving the PDHs for the engineers and the surveyors and how they have their quiz and passing grades. Garrett Wheat, well, hello there, Garrett. Little NTTD participation, appreciate that. He says they have a software service called LifeSize. Garrett, can you just talk briefly about what that is? I haven't heard of that one.
Sure, it's a video conferencing software we're using. It's similar to GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar. It's just something we were already purchasing and paying for before all this happened, so we wanted to use the same thing.
Okay.
And hi, sorry I was late.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Okay. Let's see. Whoop. My questions went away. Sorry, everyone. I know that we are getting on to 1 o'clock here, and there still are quite a few questions, as well as some additional ones that we had submitted early. I want to take a quick second to put Marilee on the line, if you're still with us, Marilee, to talk about the resource that you are developing and going to be sharing with with the centers.
Sure. And thank you for all the ideas and sharing, everyone. I'm excited to try that Zoom breakout room function and the focus function. So can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm unmuted. Perfect. Okay. So in New Hampshire at T2, we don't have an LMS either. And like all of you, we've been sharing the online learning from PC3, NHI, Federal Highway, the LTAP centers, the tailgate talks, all of that. And in our first chit chat and chew with T2 last week, we were excited to hear that some of our DPW leadership is encouraging and permitting their staff to carve out training time either as part of their split shift while they're at home or part of the social distancing at the office or the garage. And some of the feedback we heard along with that is that it's wonderful how much content we have, but it can be a bit overwhelming. And it would be helpful to have all of the training options in one place, organized by topic across all the providers and the sources, with a description of the course or the webinar, a sense of how long it takes. So kind of similar to what Emily's team has put together, we've taken some inspiration from Ohio's e-learning catalog and are putting together an online learning catalog that we're designing in Word and publishing in PDF, and it has almost 400 online learning opportunities, you know, a collection from recorded webinars from Federal Highway, from our LTAP friends, the online learning modules from TC3, NHI, the tailgate talks, they're all captured in there. And all of those 400 content titles are arranged by across 30 different topic areas. So each title is a hyperlink directly to the content. We're also including login directions for each of the providers so that that's in one place for people, technical support, help, tips, and to navigate the content. We're building in icons that denote if it's a quick training, you know, something they can do in 5 minutes or 30 minutes. We're using an icon or a symbol to denote if it's mobile friendly, if it's a staff pick, if it's something that we reviewed ourselves. And they can use that e-learning catalog by using the contents page, searching by keyword or by keyword index. So hopefully it helps them to make sense of all the learning that they can do and not have to bounce around different providers or sites and figure that out. We're planning to open it up to Road Scholar hours. So any of the content from this e-learning catalog, they can apply for Road Scholar hours during this kind of unique time. And we're being a little more flexible with how we determine their accountability to that training for the immediate future, at least. And what we did is developed an online form on our website where they'll submit their name, the course info that they completed, and then they'll provide feedback about the learning that they completed. You know, such as, is it helpful to them in their role? Would it be helpful to others in New Hampshire? Do they recommend it? And the idea is that their feedback will help us in the future as we share recommendations about the online content. So that's how we're determining Road Scholar eligibility for the immediate future, at least. And we'll hopefully have phase 1 of this PDF ready probably by Friday. If anyone's interested, we're happy to share it.
Great, thank you so much, Marilee. Let's see, we've got some more questions here. Oh, Garrett had a comment that test.com may be something that people want to look into. And I think he's saying that Life Size also has a service that helps with proctoring. Oh no, sorry, that is a separate service. There might be some apps and things that are available to help proctor some of the online training. Holly Hayden from Vermont. They are trying to figure out the best way to move to online training. Their DOT is using Teams, but they're not 100% sure that's going to be the best platform for the locals. So they are exploring GoToWebinar, but there are just so many options, and I think we're getting to that a little bit here in our conversation. Let's see. Oh, I'm looking for questions. Thank you for sharing all of this, Ben. It is being recorded. They're using Google Hangouts and a lot of different options in order to get information out to their locals. I do want to be respectful of people's time. Again, it's about 5 after 1. Victoria, what's your suggestion for how we continue with dealing with some of the questions, or possibly moving this on to another session? Victoria? Okay. Let's see. One question that we do have, that if people who are still on the line are interested, I would like to talk a little bit about registration fees. Are people charging for these online trainings? How are you managing that? That was a question from that Martha Horseman had submitted earlier. Does anybody have anything they want to share about that?
This is Karen from Pennsylvania. We don't charge for our training, so we have not charged for our virtual training. I think that's part of the reason why the classes have been filling up. It also made it a little easier for us to do our mishmash of pulling it all together because we don't have to collect money.
This is Ted. Our straight LTAP classes have been free, so that's not an issue. We do have one class that's outside of LTAP, but part of the center on traffic control because it's more of a designation / certification. That one we are still going to be collecting money for it on it overall because that's one we're still have to pay a lot of instructors for that one. So those costs haven't disappeared for us overall for that one, but that's unique. Otherwise, they're free.
This is Denise from North Dakota, and we do not charge for our training either. That's online.
Okay. All right. And some comments on that. Jennifer from Rhode Island is saying they don't charge for their trainings. So well, that makes it an easy decision. Free in person, free online. Another question that we had, let's see, how are people handling non-training online? How are the safety circuit riders and other local outreach programs? How are you doing it with limited and or no in-person contact? Are you using these to gather folks, or what are folks doing out there?
In New Hampshire, we've been using Zoom for chit chat and choose each week. It's our second week, and we've had a really good response, including from people we don't usually get to connect with because of location. And then we're doing more with Facebook Go Lives. A couple times a week, we're going live with different topics for updates, and that's been well received also.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hey.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. This is Paula from Ohio LTAP. I was just messaging with Victoria. She was trying to respond. I believe there's an issue with her microphone, so I just wanted to make you aware.
Okay. All right. I figured there had to be something going on.
Definitely.
Matthew Carter, you have your hand raised. Thank you for being so polite. Go ahead, you have to unmute yourself so that you can speak, I think. Looks like, I don't know what's happening there, Matthew, but let's keep going while we figure that out. One more second. Does anybody else have anything to say about how you're handling the non-in-person outreach efforts? Okay, all right. Another question was, has anybody had any experience or any luck with trying to incorporate the hands-on activities? I know we talked about the breakout rooms for some, group discussion, but is anybody doing anything with hands-on portions or demonstration portions of classes? That you make sure that you unmute yourself if you have something to share. Let's see.
I've gotten quiet on you, Mary.
I know. Well, no. Well, some people I think are busy typing. Matt Carter never dialed in his little pin, so he can't unmute himself. Who
Oh,
knew we
man,
had
I must
such
remember
power?
that.
We have effectively muted Matt Carter. Let's see. Stu Johnson from Vermont was saying they're doing a lot of emails and phone calls. For TA calls, Matt Carter, he will not be silenced. See, he's just typing away. For the Tech Assist calls, he's been able to handle them with phone calls and Zoom meetings. And Donna shared that the safety circuit rider community is scheduling a separate call to discuss some creative ways that they're working with their locals during this time. So we'll make sure that that information gets out on Google Groups so that folks can hop on that call and connect that way. Let's see, another question was tracking for the PAR. How are folks doing that? Obviously, if you have an LMS, you're getting that information. But for those of you who are doing the GoToWebinars, are you tracking just overall attendee numbers or attendees at the end to see who hung in there? Anybody want to share?
This is Patrick from Pennsylvania. We've been tracking the analytics from GoToWebinar to kind of gauge how people have been being involved, and it does keep track of people who are actually involved, and if they're minimizing the presentation and things like that, it actually counts that time. So we've been kind of tracking that, and we've been getting pretty high scores. And our goal has been trying to, through constantly asking questions and showing pictures and the activities we've had built into our classes. Normally, we still do them as we would in a live classroom setting. So we've been doing all those activities still online. And we find it's been working pretty well to keep people engaged. And I've been pretty happy. We've been getting ratings around 90 on the engagement scale out of 100. So it's been pretty good. And
Wow.
yeah, we haven't had people dropping off either. I think one of the things, we are limiting it to 25 folks. So we got kind of a good captive crowd. Like Karen said, we're signing out. I think in 4 or 5 minutes, people are filling up. So the people who are signing up want to be there. We have other classes where we have people who, were told to be there, which you get kind of a different student attitude from that perspective. With the fact that people want to be there, and I think we're keeping them engaged, that the attendance and the engagement's been pretty high so far.
Okay. Now, this might be more of a question for Karen. A follow-up question is, are you able to discern where they come from? Locals, tribals, state, federal? Or is it
Yes.
just oh,
Yeah,
nice.
we are. We're actually doing the same evaluation process that we would do in a class. So we're gathering the exact same data. Our turn-in rate for our classes is like the high 80s into the 90s. I'm sure with the virtual training that will drop a little bit, so we won't have quite as much data. But yeah, we will be able to tell. And even with GoToWebinars, it will tell me the county and municipality. So I will have that data actually in the GoToWebinar information. To circle back as well with the PAR and CAR, whichever one it is now, we're putting everything back into our normal LTAP database. So we will track the number of people, but we'll report the virtual separate from the classroom.
Mary, you still there?
Yay, at least one voice.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Victoria.
I'm back. Mary's muted herself for some reason. It says self-muted.
Well, here's one question I have. This is Kim from West Virginia. So this is particularly probably for Pennsylvania. Are you guys, since you're limiting to 25, how are you sending out your announcements on the class to make sure that you're, hitting a variety of people, not the same? Are you doing like targeted emails?
Yeah, it's actually quite a process. 6 of the classes so far have been what I've called statewide virtual classes.